I appreciate everyone for making it out. Hopefully, we will not get caught up in any of the rain or storms. And just again, always thankful to teams who are on the ground, ensuring that our people that are experiencing homelessness are getting the services and care that they need. So we know that oftentimes when there's inclement weather, people are out making sure folks are safe and secure and know where they need to be in the event of weather. So thank you all for that as we continue and move into this spring season, getting warmer weather and all of that good stuff. At this time, I will take the attendance, and if you have any conflicts of interest when I call your name, if you will advise at the time, that will be also appreciated. Deanna Allen Robb,
Present, no conflicts.
Catherine Knowles, Kanitha Patterson, Stephen Handy, Deirdre Childress, Liz Mallard,
Present, no conflict.
Alex Smith, Jamie Villegas,
Present, no conflict.
Exadria Inslee, India Pungarcher,
Present, no conflict.
Jordan Huffman,
Present.
Courtney Johnston, John Rutherford,
Present, no conflict.
Tom Turner,
Present, no conflicts.
Wendell Seagroves, Rico X,
Present, no conflict.
Adam Hansen,
Present, no conflict.
Ashley Horton. All right, thank you all so much. Just to give some people a heads up, we do have April Calvin and some of her team are actually at the Housing First Conference in Atlanta. So kudos to them for presenting. So we have all of her capable assistants who are here along with other staff to keep us going. And so appreciative of them being here. At this time, we will have a remembrance and moments of silence for those who have lost their lives while experiencing homelessness during the month of March. So I am going to read those names and then we will observe a moment of silence. Kirk Dickens, Lauren Wegerbar, Rose Good, Richard Perry, Brent Bidwell, Bong Cho. If we could take a moment to remember those lives. Thank you all. Just to make a note, sometimes I think we just really do want to think about the impact that homelessness does have on people. The oldest person on this list is 63, with the youngest being 32. And we know that homelessness ages people at a much rapid pace than it does the normal population. So just remember that as we continue to do this work, and how can we even look at advocacy that goes along with what our research shows us. I know oftentimes there are so many things that legislators want to do, but have we considered, oftentimes we look at 62 and older for places, and as we know for homelessness that there's 10 years behind. So just kind of think about those things as you're moving forward and what that is like. So yes, ma'am.
Just to jump in on that, I know a couple times we have had a moment of silence, and there's even been people that we haven't had on the list. So consider those that we have not recognized or found, if you could, please.
Absolutely. Sorry, I'm having they're probably gonna put us out of here. Okay. So So we're gonna do this, and then I guess they're good to go. I don't know if staff needs to alert. Here comes the tech people. They're probably like, "What did you do, ma'am?" Thank you, Raquel, for announcing to everyone what I did today.
That's it.
Thank you. Sorry. Okay, if you all, thank you for your patience. New mics, learning new things every day. For the board members, the March 2024 minutes were sent to you via email. They are also before you. If you could review those minutes and advise of any corrections or edits that you see, we will entertain those at this time. Okay, seeing none, we will accept the March 2024 meeting minutes as written. And thank you so much, Raquel, for your diligence and excellent meeting minutes. Encourage people to look at those because she will also have the follow-up items in there as well. At this time, we will have the report from the Office of Homeless Services Assistant Director, Dr. Marvin Trotter.
All right, there we go. All right, greetings and good morning. As mentioned earlier, April is out of town. She's presenting in Atlanta. Honored to share that. This is our second presentation at a national conference, which speaks volumes to the work happening and recent changes here in Nashville. She's there with a few of our teammates. It's budget season. As such, we are seeking to expand funding for vital needs and gaps in service delivery that aligns with our comprehensive focus. Clearly, the city needs additional funding to allow more intentional service delivery to our unhoused population and our service providers. Our comprehensive focus areas are, and we have four: one, bringing on permanent housing solutions by connecting with developers and MDHA. Two, assisting with the family homelessness by assisting with family homelessness by, and we're working with from three different vantage points. The first, partnering with the Family Center to assist with deploying TANF funds for mission decompression. The second, funding hotel options for Safe Haven. The third, having a dedicated staff to assist with family populations. Our third focus, addressing veterans homelessness by partnering with Built for Zero and the Veterans Group, work group. We had a great work session yesterday. Finally had a chance to meet Sally, who everyone rants and raves about. It's a great experience. Our fourth focal area is the continued encampment engagement strategy. OHS will continue to champion the work of our community's engagement strategy. Having a community plan is vital. This allows us more points on our CLC application, reduces the likelihood of our unsheltered populations, for our emails popping up. This allows us more points for our CLC application, reduces the likelihood that homelessness will be criminalized in Nashville, allows OHS to continue to seek funding for resources and housing, and actually our unsheltered populations welcome this solution. Councilman Cupin's resolution supports our efforts and calls for the increase in the safety, security, housing resources for the unhoused, and cleanliness of the properties surrounding the Cumberland River within the downtown interstate loop, with a particular interest to the Gay Street connector. They're currently doing a walkthrough as we speak of the area. As part of that, I guess you can call it a task force, to start that initial work. And that's it for my end.
Thank you. Any questions for Dr. Trotter? Deanna, and then Jamie, did you have a question? And then Kanitha.
Thank you. Just, I think from the March meeting, and I've slept a lot since then, I believe I recall, April, or a statement just regarding supportive services and making sure that we have enough supportive services in place to now that we've increased kind of inventory and stock of available housing, making sure that we have supportive services in place. So I was just listening to see if I was hearing that as a part of a strategic priority, and I'm not sure that I did. Could you talk a little bit about, or if I missed it, I apologize. Could you talk a little bit more about if there are some additional strategies to increase supportive services?
Gotta keep hitting this button. Right now, what we're doing, and from a vantage point, from the things that we're... You gotta eat the microphone. Don't want to eat the microphone. Right now, our focal points are assisting with family homelessness through a partnership with the Family Service. Is it the Family Service? The Family Center, to assist with deploying TANF dollars for mission decompression. We just started this work, so we're in initial phases and figuring out the particulars of what that looks like. I think we set an initial goal of 50 families and individuals to help with that process. Funding hotel options for Safe Haven, and having dedicated staff to assist with the family population. So right now, those are the vantage points that we're working through. Are you looking for something more particular, or? Okay.
Dr. Trotter, so we are now at, based on the funding end date for the interim housing, we're looking at 6 months to the end of funding for the the roadway hotel and the navigation centers. And we still have people in the interim housing hotel and other sites. Mm-hmm. What steps are we taking to ensure that, come this date, that people aren't just finding themselves trying to figure out where to go?
Yeah, so we're taking every step that we can. Unfortunately, we can't, we don't have enough inventory available for, with the properties that we have, the properties that are coming online, we can't push them or move them any faster than they're moving. Right now, some of the properties are in a inspection phase. So once those come available, those individuals will be moved to those locations.
And a follow-up to that question, if I may. I'm sorry. Okay. So that being said, when it comes to closing further encampments, are we considering doing that? Was this question kind of lingering?
Can you say that again? I'm sorry.
Are we considering closing additional encampments while we are kind of in the limbo?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
we wouldn't close the camp if we didn't have places to send people.
Good morning. I just want to know where the dashboard was located for this information to kind of find the information you were speaking about. I know it was mentioned before, kind of it was a dashboard, but I still don't know where to find the actual dashboard. And I just want to say the priority of the families, that's very exciting to hear, because I remember when I first started as a HPC commissioner, hearing about this particular program, so to hear it coming online is phenomenal. So that's just what I wanted to know, how to find the dashboard.
Yeah, I believe it's through Angie Everett's office.
Are you saying the housing inventory?
Yeah, all the information kind of just was running down. Yeah.
Yeah,
You can go to nashville.gov, go to
and click on the site.
go down to affordable housing, and then it'll have that dashboard on there, along with several other pages talking about housing.
India.
Thank you. This was just piggyback off of the question that Jamie just asked. When is there going to be, I guess, a plan that is public information about what's going to happen? I totally understand and appreciate, the fact that when we have folks in transitional housing, it takes a while, and I know that inventory is definitely no secret that that's an issue here. But is there a plan and going forward for, if it comes October 1st, I believe that's the date, correct, Jamie? October 31st, thank you, that funding for transitional housing, specifically roadway, ends. And so is there a date that there's going to be a transition plan if all the folks that are currently living there have not been, moved into permanent housing at that point? And is there any budget line item or funding that's going to be requested in order to keep roadway online after October?
We have a couple properties that will be coming online, as I mentioned. One in particular is in the final stage of inspection. So it is slated to open within the coming, I want to say, next couple weeks. And the majority of those at roadway applied there. The other properties that they applied to, they're in a waiting stage. It's the hurry up and wait game with the vouchers. So from what the last conversation I had with that particular group, TSA, it's just a hurry up and wait game. Those vouchers will be accounted for and used. So it's not an issue of having a space for them.
I guess I just want to get clarification on, so October 31st comes, and then is roadway a transitional site that is no longer online for us to use as a community, or what is happening after funding runs out October 31st?
Yeah, I think that's more of a TSA question. That's not us. They're the service provider.
Okay.
So that's a follow-up question for them.
So I think this goes back to what we've been talking about. There are only certain agencies who have applied for funding. So my thoughts are, if I'm remembering from previous conversations we've had around this table, is that will be an opportunity for that funding to be available. So to say that there wouldn't be anything in place, it would be up if another nonprofit decides to take that on. Because at this time, we do not know what the desire is for that particular organization. I also remember April saying that there will be an extension of funds, that it doesn't mean at that point the money will just be gone and those people will just be put out. Mm-hmm. But again, I think where as a community there is a gap is where are the other agencies that are coming up to be able to provide the supportive services, is what I think Ms. Allen Robb was getting at, is that when OHS and MDHA have dropped those RFPs, we have not had good turnout from the community. And so, yeah, it is easy for us to look at what the other organizations may or may not be be doing. But as a solutions-focused community, I continue to encourage us, going back to your own individual nonprofit board of directors and executive directors, to really advocate for what those services look like. If we are intentional, we're moving forward with housing first and supportive services, then that's what that looks like. And that those organizations are looking at, if there is a gap, how will we help absorb those? Yes, India.
Just wanted to say that, I guess, when we're thinking about this plan that we have as a city, the outdoor homelessness strategy, I feel like this is just very concerning that, maybe we won't have a roadway, maybe we will. I'll definitely follow up with folks at TSA about that, but I'd like to keep the conversation going about, in a world where if roadways coming offline, and we had 2 community care fellowship transitional sites also roll offline this year, and so that is a backbone of that outdoor homelessness strategy, right, or these transitional sites, and if some of those continue to go away, I think that that's something we need to be mindful of when talking about this plan and if we're moving forward with it.
Absolutely. And again, I think instead of us waiting for that to happen, what organization can step up to absorb it? So we don't have to wait until the fallout. That's just a thought. But I hear you, and we will continue to keep that as an ongoing conversation. And how we do that does matter. But I think you also heard then there wouldn't be a closure of encampments. And so are we at the point as a city where we're fine with leaving people on the streets? Just a thought. Susie, MDHA Collaborative Applicant Report. They should be. Just don't hit it twice.
Good. All right. Morning. Just a couple of things with the collaborative applicant. The first is that we've been one happy family. I've been working with the OHS staff, particularly Allison and Bill, going to, we're monitoring agencies. So we're looking to make sure that they're following the regulations, that they're serving homeless folks, that their expenditures are at a good level. So these are in-person visits at the grantees that get the Continuum of Care homeless funds. And it's a great opportunity for me and the OHS staff to see person to person, go and visit the actual place, understand the staff and the projects a little bit more. So that's been going well. We visited roughly half of the 9 agencies, I guess, that get that funding. And I've been sort of training the OHS staff about how it is that this monitoring goes on. It's a very exciting process, but it is necessary. We try and do it once a year just to make sure the agencies are on track. So we've got, I think, 4 or 5 more visits to come, and probably by early May we'll be done. We are also working on transferring the responsibilities of what is called the collaborative applicant. It is still MDHA and HUD's eyes, and we are hoping, we transmitted letters, one from MDHA saying we're willing to release the grant funds that are the planning grant funds that come to the collaborative applicant. And then a letter from OHS saying that we're willing to take the grant funds. We were hoping that by April 1st that change would be effected, but learned in a conversation with HUD Knoxville staff last week that that kind of transfer of the grant, although it's been done by the field office in Knoxville for ages, is really supposed to be happening in Washington, D.C. for the with the HUD staff there, which means that the process will be lengthened a bit. So we have drafted a memorandum of understanding between MDHA and OHS to plan for to use all the planning funds by the end of the project year, which is the end of June. And once that's in place, we'll sign that, and then MDHA will virtually sort of reimburse OHS for related planning grant costs. I think that's it from me. Thanks. Any questions? And I did want to, I'm the one who wants to do away with the alphabet soup. TSA is the Salvation Army.
I'm sorry, Susie.
Thank you. We will now have the HUD system performance measures by, I believe, Vi is going to give those. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Vi. I am the HMIS Data Quality and Monitoring Coordinator, and I'll be talking about the system performance measures. Before I start, a big thanks to Hannah and Chantal for working hard on this report. That being said, I will be presenting this report and answering any questions to the best of my knowledge. All right, so the System Performance Measures is a federal report that is required annually by the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act and is mandated by Congress. This report plays an important role in deciding our community's annual COC allocation from HUD. HUD wants to see if our community's performance has improved every year on these measures. And if we do, our COC application is scored higher and we have greater chance at more funding to serve more people. I'm just going to go over these briefly. You should all have a copy of this in your packet. So the first measure is measure 1, average length of time people remain homeless. So on the left, we are looking at the average number of days people are experiencing homelessness in emergency shelters, safe havens, in the yellow bars, and in emergency shelters, safe havens, and transitional housing in the blue bars. So in 2023, in emergency shelters and safe haven, you can see that on an average, people were homeless for 61 days, and with transitional housing, it averages to 88 days. These numbers are low and are great, and it has decreased from last year. On the right, the permanent housing programs are being added to this measure, and we are counting the days people spent in those programs before they moved into housing. These numbers are higher at 1,185 and 1,128, and one of those did decrease last year. Moving on to measure 2, which is returns to homelessness. Here, HUD looks at people who exited HMIS to permanent housing 2 years ago. So for this report, it is October 2020 through September 2021. And it shows from what we can see from HMIS, all those people housed 2 years ago, what percentage have returned to homelessness since then? So in 2023, that was 14.25%, which is pretty low, but it did increase a bit from 2022 when it was 12%. So we are seeing a slight increase in the number of people returning to homelessness after being housed. Measure 3 is looking at the number of people experiencing homelessness. On the left is information from our annual point-in-time count, both sheltered and unsheltered, and in 2023, it was 2,129. And on the right is the number of people experiencing homelessness in shelter in HMIS, and in 2023, it was 2,262. As you can see, both of these numbers are going up. Moving on to measure 4, increase in income and employment for adults in COC-funded projects. This includes employment income or other sources of income. The pink bars are for stayers, and we see that the last year, only 35% of adults who were active in the program when the report ended had increased their income from the time they entered last year. And the gray bars are leavers, and those are the people who exited the program during the reporting period, and only 24% of leavers had increased their income from the time they entered the program and to when they exited it. This is definitely an area where our community needs to focus on more and improve in terms of successfully increasing the income of people served in our programs. Measure 5 looks at people who become homeless for the first time. So this counts the number of people who entered the programs for the reporting period and who did not have any entries in the previous 2 years. This number has been going up for the past few years. In 2023, 2,416 people experienced homelessness for the first time. We did not do measure 6, which is about preventing homelessness if we have already ended it. We have not, and no one across the country has reported it on it yet. The last measure is successful placement into permanent housing from our programs. The pink bars on the left are the number of people from street outreach who went into permanent housing. In 2023, 244 people from street outreach exited into permanent housing. The gray lines show that only 19% of people exited from street outreach programs. Comparing this with last year, which had 261 people in street outreach, but the percentage of people was 47%. This shows that we have a lot of people in our street outreach programs in the past year and a lot more exiting to these destinations other than permanent housing. The blue bars on the right are the number of people from emergency shelters, transitional housing, and rapid rehousing who went into permanent housing. This number has increased from last year with 936 people, but the percentage of total people exiting from those programs has decreased from 47% to 42%. So both these graphs in this measure show the number of people experiencing homelessness is increasing even as we are housing more people. This concludes this report. Thank you.
Questions for Vi? Thank you. Okay, the next two reports are from Allison Cantway. She'll do the strategic planning and committee chairs convening as well as the continuum of care charter public comment period.
All right, hi everybody. So we wanted to give an update because the committee chairs all met a few weeks ago. It's the first meeting of all the committee chairs, to my knowledge, in a really, really long time, maybe ever. And it went extremely well. So, it was really positive. It was really productive. All of the committee chairs said that they really appreciated the opportunity to meet with one another and to bounce ideas off of one another because they often don't get to, right? Because they're in their own separate committees. We went over the strategic plan, just objective by objective and like sub-objective as well. And, we kind of went over which committees it would make sense to tackle certain parts of the strategic plan. Overall, I mean, it was like a multi-hour, kind of summit, but I'll, to condense it as much as possible, I think that it seems that the committee chairs generally agreed with the changes that are proposed in the charter that is currently out for public comment. There were some changes made to the committees. There was addition, there was consolidation, and seems that generally the committee chairs agreed with the changes that were revised in the charter. Though they did discuss the possibility of creating an ad hoc committee to tackle any of those strategic plan objectives that didn't feel like they naturally fit under a particular committee, because there were not very many, but there were a few that it's sort of like, where should this live? And so there was the discussion of maybe we should look into having an ad hoc committee to look at those objectives. That might be outside of the scope of any current committees. And then there was also the discussion of creating a housing-focused committee. There was not consensus on what the name of that committee would be, but there was, we talked about housing opportunity, lots of different names, but I think the idea was that they liked the idea of having a committee that would be focused on housing. And I guess I'll just move on to the charter public comment period, because last month I gave a pretty in-depth update on what the changes were in the charter, but we just want to let everybody know that it has been released for public comment. It was released at the end of March, and so the 30-day window for public comment means that folks have up until April 26th to make public comments on that, which is more than 2 weeks from now. We welcome your public comments. We want your public comments. The charter committee really dug deep into the charter and had a lot of good discussion. But they want to know what the community thinks so that then they can make any final edits to the charter. And also this will be discussed at next week's COC general membership meeting to get the feedback of the general membership as well. I believe that either the chair of the charter committee or someone from the charter committee will be there to answer questions and to talk to the group. But like I said, if you all have copies of the charter, if you need us to send it to you again, we'd be happy to. I know this charter is more comprehensive than the last one, I would say. So it's a little bit longer. It takes a little while to dig into, but we want your comments to move forward. Does anybody have any questions about our committee chairs convening and then the public charter comment? Yes, ma'am.
Just briefly, could you give an example of what the committee chairs discussed as a possible ad hoc committee? So which of these kind of objectives did they say didn't quite fit with the existing committees, if you can recall?
I can't recall, but I can email that to you because we went in like every teeny tiny bit of the strategic plan, so we have it documented. I'd be happy to share that. Yeah.
And I'll jump in really quickly. Y'all have a packet of all the objectives, and in there, the ones that are listed in green, so there's 3 separate objectives that say, in the text that say who should be responsible, it says potentially a new committee, and then it also lists that maybe it would be OHS or other metro organizations taking on some of the work.
All right, any other questions for me? Okay, thank you.
But while you're there, just as a change, before you leave, Allison, and I'm going to recognize you, Tom, I'll let you stay seated as we go into new business, and I'll just go ahead and do you first so it's not as much movement, and then we'll come back to the other report. Tom?
Do you mind if I ask a question about the HUD system performance? I'm curious about on the HUD system performance where we're using measures that use percentages of success or perhaps failure. Is it meaningful to compare those percentages to other HUD-funded programs across the country? Like Measure 2, returns to homelessness within 2 years. Like our percentages, to me, would be more meaningful if we compared them to other HUD-funded programs across the country, like on Measure 2 and Measure 4 and Measure 7. I think that allows us to evaluate whether we're effective in comparison to other programs as opposed to effective compared to ourselves, which we might think we're doing well. And if we look at that, it might show that we're doing very well or not quite so good.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I can take it to the team and I can.
Great. I think that would be helpful.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so we're under new business. We're going to go ahead and do the Homelessness Planning Council nominations by Ms. Kentway, and then we'll come back to the Data and HMIS Oversight Committee CLC Priorities Report.
Okay, great. Well, 'tis the season for nominating members for the HPC as terms are coming to a close. So the nominating committee is meeting this Friday. And so this will be the first meeting in a while of the nominating committee to really, kind of kick off the process and what that's going to look like. Of course, we want to have a continued focus on diversity. I know that that's been like a focus of the HPC for a few years now. Obviously racial diversity, and diversity of like expertise and experience. So, including folks from, the private sector or from philanthropy or the business community, just to make sure that we have like a broad area of expertise. And then of course, we're always focusing on involving more folks with lived experience because we know that they bring really, really important expertise as well. And so that's certainly something we want to make sure is well represented. We will absolutely report back after the nominating committee meets to discuss sort of how that went. If you have ideas for folks that you think would be a good fit for the Homelessness Planning Council, please send them to the nominating committee. You can send them to me or Raquel. Ingrid McIntyre is the chair of the nominating committee, so you can send them to her as well if you have folks that you think would be a good fit. Any questions about that?
All right, thank you. So you all have heard nominations are open. We would love to receive those. So if you have those, make sure you send them to the appropriate persons. We're also hopeful, I know next week is a general COC member meeting, and I'm hopeful they will have nomination forms there to pass out so that if people have nominations, then those can be given with accurate contact information would be most helpful as well. All right, thank you, Ms. Cantway. It looks like Shanley will be giving the Data and HMIS Oversight Committee COC Priorities Report.
Hi, good morning. My name is Shanley Degnan. I'm the chair of the HMIS Oversight Committee. Many of you have heard this a million times, but we've been meeting jointly with the Data Committee and working together to finalize and approve the report that I'm going to talk about today. As soon as the new charter is approved, we will be officially one committee, but we have worked jointly to make this report final. So this is actually the second time I've been before you to talk about this report. The first time was maybe last summer. We moved very quickly to make our recommendation last summer to the Performance Evaluation Committee so that they had hard data to use in their decision process to rank continuum of care projects that were proposed for the annual competition. They have for many years been seeking more guidance when it comes to that process so that the projects that we're funding as a community really meet the need. So without this kind of data, it felt a little arbitrary. So we are hoping that this will be part of the process moving forward. This report gave us a lot of confidence that we can do more things like this, and we're available to you all as a committee too to do other reports like this. So I know you've already, digested a lot of data today. I'll try to keep this as high level as possible, especially since you've seen it already. But ultimately, we pulled data from the HUD's last calendar year. So this is a little bit dated. We're going to now that we have a template for this, it'll be a lot easier for us to redo it for this year's competition. But ultimately, when we pulled HMIS data, we found that a large majority of people that are experiencing homelessness in our community are single adults. Many of them also meet HUD's definition of chronic homelessness. And we do have a definition section in this report, but if you're not familiar, the chronic definition is anyone who's experienced homelessness for more than 365 consecutive days, or someone who's experienced 4 episodes of homelessness in 3 years. Someone in the household will have a disabling condition. So that is HUD's chronic definition. And nationwide, this is recognized as the most vulnerable people that are experiencing homelessness. So again, like I said, we found that this is the population we see most in the people that are experiencing homelessness locally. The first chart here, if you'll look, is household compositions in HMIS. And as you can see, the one adult household composition is the overwhelming majority of people in our community that are experiencing homelessness as compared to families with children. One of the requests that you and the COC general membership had for us was to infuse more racial demographic information into this report, which we did. So you'll see it side by side, and it's really meant to offer some more perspective about each of the charts that we're looking at. So below this yellow and gray chart is kind of showing us the breakdown of the racial demographics as seen in HMIS versus the larger census data. All right, if you will turn to the second page. The second chart here, and there's a lot more data in the narrative that, you're welcome to look at. The second chart is looking at exits by household type. So on the left, we're looking at adults versus the right side, we're looking at families. And what we can see is that only 22% of all adults that exit HMIS are exiting to a permanent housing destination versus 74% of their family counterparts, which are exiting to a permanent housing destination. And I just want to kind of asterisk here that this report is not to say that other populations aren't equally important. This is just to sort of highlight where we are as a community in terms of serving single adults. So that's important to keep in mind. The bottom chart on page 2 is again sort of breaking down the racial demographics. We explored here to see if there was much of a difference between how long Black versus white individuals and families are accessing housing. And what we found is that ultimately there was not much of a meaningful difference between Black and white individuals moving into housing. We did find a fairly significant difference between Black and white families, and there's more specific details here, but we found that Black families were more likely to move into housing, although it was taking them significantly longer. So we thought that was interesting and notable. This is a lot. Any questions so far? Okay.
Can you repeat when you said that you didn't find much difference between single? Because when I look at the last paragraph that you have, and it says 53% are Black or African American, which is 43%, but in comparison to what the population is in Nashville?
Yeah, so that, see, we broke that up, so it is meaningful in that way, but in terms of the breakdown based on general census data, it's significant. In terms of actual numbers of people experiencing homelessness, Black versus white individuals, there was, I think, only a day of difference. It says it here in the report somewhere. 148 days versus 153. But when you zoom out, Jaha, yeah, you're exactly right. It's still pretty important. I also usually have my comfort blanket, AKA Hannah, here to talk about really technical things. So if there's any other questions, Hannah will surely circle back. Okay, now we're moving on to look at diving deeper into chronic homelessness. And again, as we can see, so the blue represents adult-only households versus yellow, which is families. And it's very starkly clear here that far more adult-only households are meeting the chronic homelessness definition versus families. And then the last chart here is showing basically our stock of different project types. So emergency shelter and transitional housing is the first line, rapid rehousing, and then permanent supportive housing. And I'll pause here to say that, again, nationwide, permanent supportive housing has been proven to be the most effective resource for people that are experiencing chronic homelessness. And as we've established, we have a lot of people that meet that definition here. And as you can see in this final chart, the PSH graph shows that only a very small percentage of people filling that resource in our community actually meet the chronic homelessness definition. And we found that interesting. So, in conclusion, again, we found that the overwhelming majority of people experiencing homelessness in our community are single adults. And we also found that at the same time, that is the population least likely to find permanent housing in our community. So the point of this is really to just keep this in the back of your mind. You know, you are a body that is hearing about all types of programs and money opportunities, and really our hope is that moving forward, this is always sort of the population that we are at least considering when we are making funding decisions. So we're going to continue to revise this and make it available to the Performance Evaluation Committee for COC opportunities, but we hope that you'll take it a step further for other resources that come to your desk. We want to continue as one of our next iterations of this report, or an additional report, is to further break down racial disparities seen in our community. So maybe Jaha, tying the two charts that you mentioned together. We're asking that the PEC, the Performance Evaluation Committee, continue to ensure that COC-funded PSH projects are appropriately prioritizing people that meet the chronic definition. And third, we're recommending that the coordinated entry process should establish referrals for all PSH projects that prioritize people experiencing chronic homelessness. Again, that was a lot. Are there any questions? Okay. Well, thank you.
I guess I do have a quick question, Shanley. Sorry. Processing moment. So, love the recommendations. I guess when you say what those recommendations are, is who are they recommended to and what recommended action? Because it's great to have them and I think they're great. And I just want to make sure as the chair of this body, we can help move that forward.
I think we're sort of taking on our own recommendation for the first one. Two, I think like we've sort of established a line of communication to the PEC, but I think it's really helpful as the HPC to sort of back that or have, you know, that come from you guys more directly would be really amazing and helpful. And three, I know one of the main charter revisions is creating a committee that will provide oversight to the coordinated entry process. So I would imagine that the third recommendation would go to that new body. But in the meantime, sort of in the same way, I think it'd be helpful for you guys to kind of, you know, be listening for any place where this makes sense and help make sure that it's happening.
Thank you. I think Deanna has a question too.
No, not a question for you, but just a follow-up to you, Jahad. I serve on the PEC. I can say last year when we received this report as a part of our review process, we did take it into consideration and looked at COC project requests that were specifically funding permanent supportive housing. And now, as those projects have been funded and we're in the monitoring process, I'm speaking a little bit in that territory over there. As a look at Susie, we are evaluating, wanting to know more information about how well those projects are performing. So I just want to reiterate, we do take the recommendations seriously. We do have discussion about being data driven and being data conscious about where is the gap and how do we really use the COC funds to fill the gaps for the people that have the greatest needs and all the other needs as well. So just to say that accountability is there, and I do appreciate your point. And I'll also say this, I have to run, so I apologize for leaving early, but if other, HBC members are not currently serving on a committee, you are welcome to join the PEC.
Thank you. And thank you to the committee for such hard work. Any other questions? Well, I'm going to hate to be the only one to keep talking about this, but I do want to go on record as saying throughout this body and throughout this tenure, we have seen that there is a huge equity difference. And what I have not heard as a community is what are we going to do to truly address that? And I know there have been some efforts, and I'm not saying we have to have the answer, but I do think I hear a lot of concerns about what is going on, and we do know that those things are existing. But I would hope that the committee will really, and I've also said that I do at this point have asked that the Office of Homeless Services, the staff, begin to really look at strategically what does that look like. We have the data that supports it, and so how we move forward with ensuring equity is very important. And I just want to make sure that I'm saying that because I also have not heard much other commentary about it. So just to go on record as making sure we are keeping that at the forefront, but not just saying it, because I know Susie has said it in several meetings. We know before Dr. Shin has raised the concern, but we just have not really made much movement about that. And I do think there are some clear ways in which that can be done in terms of improving where we advertise our coordinated entry points, how are we reaching communities that don't look like us, where are we doing those things, and how are we making sure that we are providing equitable services as well. So just want to make sure we keep that at the forefront of this body as we continue to have transition. So with all of that being said, I appreciate all of the work. We are getting this information. Now what do we do with it? Are you wanting to say something, Kanita? Go ahead.
I didn't know when you was going to look back this way. But I just want to say, like you said, reach. I really want to bring that to the forefront? And just, again, how do we gel it together as far as what's missing data? Because we have the data, like you said, but what's missing from that to plug in the gaps? So just, I'd like to also see how that goes forth in a formulation maybe as well.
Okay, so we have been noted, and I know at the last executive committee, because I think, let's be real, committees that are a part of the COC oftentimes are ran by people who are, working and on the ground. So sometimes that's difficult. So we are looking to build supports around that, but welcome others as well. With that being said, let me go to this, because you all know I like to end on the story of progress. So before we get to our story of progress, because we have an awesome presenter today to share that, are there any questions, concerns, closing thoughts prior to us going into that? Okay, so at this point, we will have Mr. Omari Booker come and share his story of progress with us. For those on HPC, there is a PowerPoint presentation, and we welcome you. You can, I don't know if you want to stand because you're so tall, but you're also welcome to have a seat, whatever is most comfortable for you.
Also was incarcerated more than once, probably 3 times total, 2 for kind of significant amounts of time. But the last incarceration was a 15-year prison sentence that I completed 3.5 of and had to do the rest on parole. Got off parole last year after completing that 10-year amount of time of kind of being under the thumb of the system, but not actually incarcerated. So yeah, when I hear things like chronic homelessness, it makes me think about recidivism. It's like, what are the things that made it possible for me to not go back? One of those big things are the community, like people, like my brother Rico X, like people that I know and love and that have kind of held me through that 10 years after I got out. Of course, my parents, family, and art was probably the most impactful thing that I've leaned on as I navigated, working jobs and doing all the day-to-day things that anyone has to do to kind of get from that point of just getting back into society to actually living and thriving. And yeah, that journey is arduous. And so art making has been that consistent therapeutic thing where, everybody may not be able to afford like a counselor or a therapist or whatever, but there's something that people can kind of bring to their day-to-day life experience. It'll help them express themselves and tell their stories. I found the same thing with people experiencing homelessness that have a lot of stories to tell and a lot of things to express and don't always have an outlet that is that they can do that through. So art is one way that I encourage it, but it's whatever anyone likes to do, whether it's write, talk to each other. I mean, in my experience with spending a lot of time with people that have experienced homelessness or that are currently experiencing homelessness, those are the most present people that I can ever find in society. It's like they're not on their way to a meeting. They're not going to pick up such and such. It's like they're right there with you. And that's what is so inspiring to me. It's inspired bodies of work. You all will have some images that I did a series called Still Life, which is looking at the connection and intersection of people experiencing homelessness and still life imagery, and thinking about those, those people that can often not be looked at as life as they are still life. But yeah, I think some of those gifts that people bring to our community that you can't really quantify, like financially, are really important to make space for all of us to exist and all of us to thrive. And yeah, just maybe 2 days ago, a good brother B, they call him B, named Brandon, who's lived at kind of underneath an underpass at a church off Clarksville Highway, was forced to be removed from that space where he's been for over a year, probably a couple of years. And myself, my partner, like when we drive by, we get choked up because he was like a part of that community that people weren't really realizing. Like he brings something of value to that, to that neighborhood that you can't quantify. And so yeah, it's I think the work that's being done here is really important. I'm not an early riser, so I'm grateful that I was allowed to come in at 9 something. And but yeah, that's kind of my that's a brief synopsis of my story. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad the work is being done. I'm glad to be a part of my city and my community, and all of us collectively doing this thing, because you all have gifts that I don't have, that you all are bringing to the table consistently, and we're all kind of doing our little part to make this thing happen. So I'm grateful. And yeah, with that, questions or comments or concerns?
I think Mr. Booker forgot to share something really important too. Not that all of that wasn't awesome, but he did a mural. Where have you most recently done it that you want to tell us?
Well, there is one at Briarville, or not Briarville. There's one coming up at a permanent supportive housing project. I haven't done it yet, but it has been. I've been awarded the project through Metro Arts to work on a project at
So for those who don't know, that would be the Strobel Center. So part of it, just to really show, because sometimes what I think, there's a misperception. You never know if you look at this brother, you're like, oh, he got it all together. He's a phenomenal artist, and he does have all of those things. But my point is, be mindful. You never know what stories people have. We don't know what stories the people around this table have. And I think sometimes everyone's not as vocal in sharing it. And so we just need to be mindful of that, which is one of the reasons I wanted him to come. I've heard him speak in other places, but wanted to share that with you all as well. So thank you for just coming out. I am not a morning person either. Other people around here are not a morning person. I'm sure Jamie doesn't mind me saying. But we do appreciate you taking the time out and sharing with us. Any questions for Mr. Booker? Yes, Kanita.
I would like to invite you to our CAB meeting, please.
Oh well.
To speak to the people.
Let me know about it. Yeah, let me know about it.
That's Miss Raquel.
I will.
Yeah.
Oh, and I will also invite all of you all. I'm doing an open studio this weekend. I sent Raquel very recently the invite, so anyone that's interested, she has the invite. It'll be Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at my home studio. So you're all welcome. Sponsored by Guidance Whiskey, so we're gonna turn up on Friday. Well, not me personally. I kind of had to leave that
Just
alone.
to also know, these are
will.
all alumnus of the Tennessee State University.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I'm also an alum of the Tennessee
I know,
State
that's what I'm
University,
saying.
yes. Me and the brother from Guidance, Jason.
Well, thank you. So, Raquel, if you could get that out to us, we would be most appreciative. And also, even the creators of Guidance are Tennessee State alums. So, we will definitely see how we can support that. Thank you all so much.
Thank you all. Thanks.
So with that being said, we are going to conclude this April meeting at 9:42, and I will see you all next week at the COC General Membership Meeting on Thursday at the Rescue Mission at 10:30, and others, we will see you here next month. Have a great rest of your day.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.